Antonina sat in the chair and looked out the window. She faced an important decision but wondered if she was allowed to make it on her own. Her children had already made all the decisions for her, and they insisted she follow their lead. They had money problems and she was a mother who had to help them. Antonina sighed heavily, realizing she needed to pack her things slowly and only take the essentials. Leave everything else behind, it will disappear. Vera and Kostya instructed Antonina to bring only her clothes, photo album, and knitting when living with them. Leave everything else behind, it will disappear. Although Antonina wanted to keep many things, she asked how she could leave everything. Vera, unsatisfied, responded by saying to only take the most necessary things. She urged Antonina to bring no more than 2 suitcases, as they do not have space to store everything. Antonina understood she would have to give up everything that mattered to her. Vera and Kostya allowed her only a week to pack before selling the house. The children promised they would have given the house to their mother if they weren't in dire financial straits. Nevertheless, they desperately needed the money, hence why they convinced her to sell. They assured her they wouldn't desert her and that she could live with them. True, they hadn't yet decided with whom Antonina would live, but they promised she wouldn't be homeless. Antonina only cared that her children wouldn't desert her. For an entire week, Antonina combed through her house to gather the things she needed. Every item brought back memories and made it difficult for the woman to part with things that had sentimental value. She gathered 2 suitcases of belongings and another bag filled with brand new bed linens and lovely porcelain figurines. Technically, the linens weren't new since they had sat unused for many years. Antonina assumed that her children would have a use for them, and the figurines were too pretty to discard. In a week, the kids picked up the items and didn't refuse the gift. However, Vera wasn't delighted that her mother had accumulated so many possessions. I advised you to bring minimal luggage. I packed the 3rd suitcase with bedsheets and figurines. Antonina objected. Vera wanted to say something to her mother but decided against it. We will take 3 suitcases, said Vera. Antonina lived in an area where tall buildings were slowly appearing. She owned a big piece of land, which was bought by a wealthy man who later constructed a 2-story house on it. Sadly, Antonina's house was destroyed, and there was nothing left to remind her of what was once there. Antonina now lives in a fancy apartment with her daughter. She got a room that used to be Vera's husband's study. Vera convinced him to leave the room, even though he didn't like it. They bought a plain bed and a small closet. The room wasn't very comfortable, so Antonina couldn't hang her pictures. Vera was upset because Antonina gave her daughter a suitcase that contained bedding and porcelain statuettes. Her daughter accepted the gifts but didn't acknowledge them. Antonina didn't notice that the bedding and statuettes were missing, and her daughter didn't display them. When Antonina asked where they went, her daughter didn't answer. This suitcase has gone, but the daughter was indignant. Mom, leave me alone with my questions. The suitcase is lying in the closet together with your presents. I told you that I don't need bed linen. This article should have been thrown to the trash long ago, and I don't need the statuettes. Then Kostya. With time, the relationship between her husband and Vera began to deteriorate. He was irritated by his mother-in-law's constant presence in their home. It's only fair, Vera argued. Vera got frustrated with her mother's interference and phoned her brother to ask if he could take her in for a while. She's your mother too, so let her live with us in turn. Now it's your turn. Take her away, she told her brother. Kostya was unhappy, but eventually agreed, and Antonina moved in with her son. No one bothered to ask for her opinion. The children simply made the decision for her. Kostya's spouse was unpleasant and unwilling to compromise. They forbade Antonina from entering the kitchen or watching TV in the living room, causing her to retreat to her own room. Despite Antonina requesting that Kostya purchase her a TV, he was unable to as he didn't have the additional funds. Kostya also advised Antonina to refrain from aggravating Lena, who frequently expressed grievances about her behavior. Instead, he promised to acquire a radio for her to listen. 2. I was thirsty. Kostya didn't reply but frowned. Later that day, he phoned his sister Vera and said, "We need to take action. My wife is very upset because my mother keeps interfering. Vera objected. What's your plan, exactly? Let's place her in a nursing facility. You'll have to foot the bill or else she'll be your responsibility. I won't pay for it. I am at a loss as to what to do, as if I'm broke. Okay, then take her to your place. She appears in the kitchen like a phantom, looking so piteous as if we're indebted to her, as if it's our fault. I'm sick and tired of everything. I'm exhausted from her presence. Kostya refused. No, I won't take her away. I've been looking after her for a month now. Go figure out where to put her. You can't abandon her on the street. Vera replied. If I knew it was going to be this hard, I wouldn't have sold the house. Kostya said you were the first to ask for money. Why didn't you consider that you would have to take her somewhere? I warned you that she would live for a long time. Now she will torture us. Vera answered. I had no idea it would be so difficult, sighed Kostya. His brother and sister never accomplished anything, and Antonina ended up staying with her son. Eventually, the old woman realized that her children didn't need her at all. She also recognized that nobody loved her in this world. When she let the children sell the house, she made an awful mistake. Now she had nothing left and nowhere to go. Antonina had lost everything, and her children didn't need her anymore. As a result, she decided to go visit a neighbor who lived near her former home. Bone and his wife were not home, though. She grabbed her bag and went to the bus stop on her own. The elderly woman wasn't sure which route led to her destination, but she decided to ask people for assistance. Since she didn't expect any calls and no one would be searching for her, she left her phone at home. Some nice people provided her with the correct transport number to reach her destination. Upon arrival, she was shocked to find a luxurious mansion instead of her old house. A high fence prevented any snooping around the area. Nothing reminded her of her past residence. Antonina felt tears filling her eyes. What had she done wrong? How could she allow her children to treat her so badly? She felt dizzy and leaned against the tall fence. After a moment, she heard a sour voice. The elderly woman didn't respond but pulled her hands away from the fence and stepped back. She stumbled over a rock, fell to the ground, and let out a loud scream. Suddenly, she heard a recognizable voice calling out, Antonina, is that you? What's happened? Why were you so careless? Antonina's former neighbor Lyuba quickly stood up and helped her. Lyuba helped Antonina to get up. Luckily, Antonina didn't break anything but twisted her leg, causing some pain when walking. Let's go to my place. I'll help you, said Lyuba. She took Antonina to her home. Antonina limped a little and was unable to see what was in front of her. After Antonina calmed down and stopped crying, Lyuba gave her some tea and a delicious muffin. Lyuba waited patiently until Antonina was ready to talk. Antonina then explained that her children had made her sell her house even though she did not want to. Now, her children did not want her around and she had nowhere to live. Antonina hasn't seen or heard any kind words or looks. It's not living, it's pure misery. Lyuba felt sorry for Tanya as she looked like a very old woman. Despite only a 5-year difference between them, Antonina had aged a lot lately, and it was apparent that she hadn't received any care. It was so unfair. Antonina had 2 children, but they had grown up to be so inhumane. The woman was all alone with no family. Lyuba was determined not to leave Antonina in this state. Love took Antonina's hand and said, I know what to do. You will no longer be alone. You won't be alone anymore. My son is taking me to his countryside property where he's built a lovely house. My son is taking me to his countryside property where he's built a lovely house. He's inviting us to live in his nearby old house, which is cozy and accommodating for the both of us. My son won't object since we'll help care for his 4 children, assist him, and maybe even tend the garden. Luckily, his wife, Marina, is a very gracious person. I'm confident that everything will work out well. You can inform your kids that you're coming along with me. It's unlikely they'll be able to obstruct us. Antonina paid close attention to her neighbor. The lady spoke with determination and tenderness in her voice,
filling Antonina with a glimmer of optimism upon hearing Luba mention the children. The elderly woman shook her head, indicating a negative response. "I don't want to inform my children of anything. I prefer they do not know where I am or anything about me. I don't want them to know anything about me. They'd be happy if I disappeared. They hurt me a lot." Antonina had tears in her eyes again. She patted me on the shoulder with a cheerful gesture. All right. Whatever you say. Just don't cry anymore. I'll call my son and tell him everything. You'll see. He's a good man. He'll never leave you and me." 3 months have gone by and Antonina now lives in the village with Luba in a small, old but very comfortable house. The two women get along famously. Vasily, Luba's son, is taking care of them both. Luba shared Antonina's story with him and Vasily was pleased to have Antonina stay in their village. The elderly women assisted Vasily in caring for his children, and when feasible, tended to the vegetable patch and planted flowers in the garden beds located by Marina and Vasily's home and their cottage. Antonina now constantly smiled since she had a clear conscience and was useful to others whom she aided. Marina expressed gratitude towards the women and never witnessed any discourtesy. She was always kind and welcoming, often inviting older women to her home for dinner and serving delicious food. Antonina was thankful for the strangers who took care of her and felt content. Occasionally, she thought about her distant children who may not know about her well-being. They probably assumed she had passed away, so they were relieved she wasn't a burden to them anymore. Luba recommended that Antonina inform her children that she was doing well. Antonina refused to see her children, who had caused her distress. Luba discovered the whereabouts of Antonina's daughter but did not inform Antonina. Instead, she went to inform Antonina's daughter about her mother. When Vera found out that her mother was alive, she was enraged. "You have been searching for your mother for only a few days. You're monsters for not needing her. How could you do that for nothing? I came for nothing. You're beasts, not people." Luba walked away, feeling dirty. She didn't tell Antonina that she went to her daughter's home. The kids didn't need their mother at all. They didn't even ask where Antonina resides presently. It's better for Antonina to live out her remaining years with the good folks in this village than to hear the hurtful things her daughter uttered.